Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining on this lovely Thursday afternoon. Let me present this. There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you for joining for our STEM resume writing workshop. Let me go through the agenda really quick. We're going to do a quick welcome and some introductions because it's our first workshop really of the season for STEM Core as a nationwide program. So we're super happy. Then we're going to talk about some workshop series reminders. Then we'll go into the resume writing presentation and then answer any questions and then talk about the one-on-one signups. So actually, first off, let me hand it to Cheryl for her introduction.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Well, I guess depending where you are, some of you it might be good evening, but thanks for being here. So my name is Cheryl Martinez, and obviously, like you heard from Myra Perez already, we are about a quarter of the team from Growth Sector. For those of you who do not know who Growth Sector is a small nonprofit based out of the Bay Area. We are a workforce intermediary. So essentially what that means is we work very closely with each of your campuses to implement the STEM core program on your campus. Well, a lot of cameras are off, but I can see some people who are like, am I in the right place? My program's not called STEM core. Totally fine. Some of you might be called STEM core. You might be called Bridge to Engineering, Math Gateway. A lot of you are called STEM core. STEM core is sort of like the umbrella term that we call our program across all campuses, but you are in the right place. We are super excited to have all of you here. Just for your reference, the STEM core program is on over 30 campuses across the country. So you are in good company. And we really work closely with your student support specialists, your counselors, your coordinators, to make sure that you're overall having a really positive experience. A big part of the work that you're putting in the classroom, we want to make sure that likewise, we're setting you up for success for eventual employment, because that's the end goal, right, for all of you. And part of that is going into potential internships and research opportunities during the academic year. And for most of you, that would be in next summer 23. So we did want to take a moment to remind you of some of the things that we have coming up for you during this academic year. So as Myra mentioned, this is sort of our kickoff. This is our first event for the 2023 or 2022 academic year, our academic semester for the fall semester. But we have a lot of really exciting things coming up for all of you. We are really making sure, I know some of you, you're brand new to the program. Some of you might have been here last semester or previous semesters. Everybody's welcome. But we really want to make sure that we are equipping you all with all of the tools necessary to land a really great internship or research opportunity next summer. We're already thinking about next summer. Can you believe it? So Myra, can you skip to the next slide, please? In terms of the workshop series. So we have a couple of different ways that we are working closely with your campuses to provide you all with some great opportunities. So step one, you're already here for the STEM resume writing workshop. So you probably have already received this from your campus student support specialist, but we have a STEM resume writing workshop today and also on September 8th. So if you're here today, check like off the list. You don't need to attend September 8th because it's going to be the exact same session. We're also recording today's session as well. So we'll be sure to email this out to you as well. That way, if you want to go back and reference some of the materials that we go over today, you'll be able to do that. In addition, we have a couple of other opportunities coming up later this semester in sort of like this internship development series that we have for all of you. So a little bit later in the semester on October 14th, we have a really great speaker coming in to talk about career readiness. So that's October 14th from 10 to 11 Pacific Standard Time, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, called Getting to the Bag, Career Readiness Strategies for Students Pursuing STEM Degrees. So make sure that you click that link and actually register the same way you did for today's event. You'll need to go online and register for that event, and that's when you get the actual link for the session. And then on November 17th, a little bit later on in the semester, we'll be doing a LinkedIn workshop. Hopefully you know what LinkedIn is. If you don't know what LinkedIn is, this will be a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about the platform and how you can utilize it to find great opportunities and to network as well. So those are some of the internship development series, but even more exciting, we have our employer development series or our employer virtual series that's also available. So I think Myra's going to click over to maybe the flyer on the Google Drive, Myra.
Yes.
Okay. So some of you I know on this call might have already participated in an internship through the STEM Core program. Others of you might have heard whispers about it. So we work closely with employer partners across the country from big to small. We work with like the Northrops, the Lockheeds, to research institutions like University of Maryland, Cal State LA, and everything in between. And there are tons of opportunities that you'll all have to be able to apply in, for internships with a lot of these companies. However, we want to make sure that you have an understanding of who these companies are, what they do, why should you even consider interning with them. So we do have a series of partners who are going to be coming on over the next throughout the fall semester to come on to speak to all of you about who they are, what they do, what a day in the life of an intern potentially looks like. And for some of these, you'll actually get to hear from STEM Core interns who interned at these sites. So here's the full schedule. You should have also received this from your STEM Core student support specialist, but if not, we'll be sure to include this, Myra, in the materials that we send out to everybody after today's session. So just keep an eye out for these sessions, put them in your calendar because they're going to be really great. And then lastly, I just want to note that we're exposing you to these employers. We're helping you create your STEM resumes, and then we are going to open our internship application later this fall, probably around October. So you'll be receiving the link for the STEM Core internship application from your actual student support specialist, probably going as we get closer to October. So just know that all of these companies work super, super early to place students for summer internships. I know you're thinking it's still summer, but we are already thinking about next summer. So just make sure that you're aware of all of this and that it's happening. And we're really excited for you, but lots of support here. Please ask questions. You are in excellent hands with Myra, and you will be seeing a lot of both of growth sector, but a lot of both Myra and myself, in addition to your support specialists, especially when it comes to internships and career readiness. But we're excited to have you and welcome. And I think we're going to go into the meat of today's discussion, which is around resumes. So exciting.
Yes.
Let's go.
And actually, I realized I didn't even say who the heck I was. So hello, everyone. My name is Myra Perez, and I am a former student support specialist at one of our Orange County campuses over here in California. But now I work with the nationwide program of STEM Core, and I'm super excited to do so. You'll probably see my face quite a bit just because I will be leading a lot of the workshops, both for students and even, well, I don't know about support specialists, but for sure for students. I will also be at the end, I'll talk to you about some one-on-one resume reviews that you'll have the opportunity to be able to participate in if you'd like. So I lead those as well. And if you decide to, which we hope that you all do, if you participate and apply for the internship application, you'll definitely be hearing either from me or Cheryl. So you'll be seeing a lot of me, even though we may never meet in person. You'll see me and will definitely know me and hear from me. So I look forward to this new academic year with you all. So without further ado, getting to the meat of the lovely STEM resume workshop. Why do you even need a resume, right? As I mentioned to you before, I've been working with, well, I didn't mention, but I've been working with STEM Core for a good minute now. So I've been working with not only students on my actual physical campus that I used to work on, but students from all over. And one thing that I have definitely come to see is a lot of resumes. And having worked with all these different employers that we do and talking with them and hearing about what they are looking for, both in students and what they receive in applications, especially for very competitive opportunities that we have. We want to make sure that you guys are in the best possible position when you're applying, that you are putting your best foot forward, your resume is is nice and shiny and tidy. And so this is why it's really important to go over this workshop with you. But apart from that stuff, a resume is needed really as a marketing tool. You know, whether you participate going to local or national conferences like STEM conferences through your campus, and there's opportunities to network in person, being able to have a physical copy of your resume, whether you see other opportunities pop up virtually that you can apply to or through us, or even at like if you are placed in an internship and another opportunity within that internship is open, you want to be ready with your resume ready to go. So it is a way to market yourself, and you just want to make sure it's ready. It's also used to obtain an interview. Please remember, submitting a resume to an application doesn't mean that you get the job or internship. It means that it can push you forward to be able to have an interview. So it's getting through that first initial phase, right? Which is sometimes the most important, because if you can't get through that first phase, that's where sometimes it can stop you entirely. So we want to make sure it's as polished to get you through. And obviously it's a requirement of many organizations. With that said, when you present your resume, or when an employer receives your resume, it really can say a lot about you without you even realizing. When a resume is presented and it is nice and neat, it really can show, in layman's terms, that you are nice and neat, right? You have everything organized, all that good stuff. Again, well organized, it can say that you are well organized. When a resume is error-free to an employer, it can say, wow, this person pays attention to detail. They took the time to go through and make sure everything's lined up or in the same font. And let me tell you, after speaking to many employers, they notice these things, especially for the very competitive ones, and even just for general life experience. When you're applying to something, many of these employers get hundreds, thousands of resumes and applications. They need to find a way to filter through these. And many times, what we don't realize is that when you send in a resume, it may not be a human who's actually reviewing your resume at first. It might be some sort of program that they have that scans through all the incoming resumes, especially if they have high volumes, and they're looking for these kind of easy errors that show that there is no attention to detail in your resume, to be able to filter those out. So again, you want to make sure that you're presenting your best foot forward. And then if your resume has a professional experience, again, it can show that you're careful and competent. Sections of a resume. So we're going to break it down, really unpack it, so that way you really know what you want to make sure to have on here. Starting with the header, which you may think, okay, it's just general information, but even then I have run into very interesting issues. So what you want to include in your header is obviously your contact information. So that includes your name, address, email address. Some people may choose to put their like physical address. Some people don't, and that's either or I've seen is fine. But in regards to email addresses, you want to make sure that it is appropriate. If you have an email address, maybe that you created back in like 6th grade or junior high, that's like, sparkly unicorn, or, party girl, something, you want to make sure maybe not use that one. Create a new email. If you can, keep it to, your name and maybe just a couple numbers. Again, you want to make sure that from here on out, you use something that is a bit more professional. Another thing to keep in mind when you are creating your emails, try to make it as easy and potentially error-free as possible. What do I mean by that? If you have a long name, I have seen sometimes students with very long names, and they put that all in their email. If an employer has to physically type out your email, don't put like the same number one after the other. So for example, Myra Perez 1111111 @gmail.com. That is a huge potential for error, right? Because if they can't for some reason copy and paste it, or they just want to, whatever it may be, they're bound to forget one of the ones, or miss, or add an additional one, or if there's too many of the same letters together, the same thing. So you want to try to make it as easy to spell out, type out as possible. Again, eliminating any potential errors on the employer side, because if they keep getting their email bounced back, that might be a missed opportunity. Another thing that I want to make sure that you guys pay attention to is your phone number listed on there. Think about, I know nowadays people are like, who listens to voicemails, right? But believe it or not, employers will call, they will leave voicemails. And so you want to make sure that I've noticed with a lot of students, especially nowadays, they don't set up their voicemail boxes. You want to make sure that's ready to roll. Think about what an employer will hear if they call you. For your voicemail, you can leave just the general machine that says the little spiel that it does, or personalize it and just mention your name, your phone number. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you, blah blah blah. Another thing too, sometimes students have the voicemail boxes set up, but it's completely full, and then it usually just clicks on you. So that's a potential problem, right? Because if an employer is trying to reach you and then you don't answer, and then they can't leave a voicemail, and maybe there was a misspelling in your email, lost opportunity. So make sure to pay attention to those small things. And also one other thing too that I've noticed a lot, usually in errors, is when students are writing down their address, like home address or whatever, there's sometimes also misspellings with not capitalizing street names or not putting a period after, like if you don't spell out street and you just do ST, put that period. These small little things that you wouldn't necessarily think make a difference really do. So just make sure to pay attention to those things. And usually with the header, your contact information goes to the top of the page. So here's an example. This is Anita. Anita is, has her general address, phone number, and then her email nice at the top. One thing that I would also mention is if you're required to write a cover letter, which at least in our experience for our intern applications, no student has had to include a cover letter, but just for future reference. What I like to do is when you send in a cover letter, I just copy and paste my header information onto a separate blank sheet. And that's what I use as my header for my cover letter. So try to keep everything uniform, and literally you can just copy and paste it, make it look all nice and neat and professional. So just FYI. Objective statement. With the objective statement, the purpose is to communicate the type of position that you're interested in, and also really to help the employer to see what you're moving into, whether it be a new area or industry. I would say for most students that we work with, being able to just communicate the type of position that you're interested in is the purpose of the objective statement. This second part, I would say, to help an employer see if you're moving from a new industry, is sometimes usually applied to my returning students. So I may have had a student who was studying to do like auto repair, like mechanic type stuff, right? And they realize, you know what, instead of auto, I want to move into mechanical engineering. That's great, right? You're just, the classes that you already took under the auto field are going to be super applicable under mechanical engineering, right? So, but you may want to explain that because your resume rate may reflect just training or experience in the auto field. So that's your chance to explain, former auto mechanic, major auto, something of the sort, and then explaining that you're moving into mechanical engineering. So they can kind of make sense of, why does this student have so many auto classes or manufacturing classes? Again, it kind of just helps give the employer context. So an example, engineering major seeking a part-time engineering technician internship. If you want to be specific with what kind of company, you can do so. Again, it shouldn't be more than 1 or 2 sentences. And it's not necessarily required, but I would say for you guys, it's a good idea to add. So here's an example. Anita is a civil engineering major seeking a part-time engineering technician internship at a construction company. So she was a bit specific there. For education, all of this is very important, especially for our student interns. Obviously, you all are still students, right? The employers that we work with know you're all students. So for us, education should really be at the top of your list, towards the beginning of your resume. Why? Because they want to know what kind of classes or STEM classes have you been taken, or what kind of subjects have you been exposed to. Are you, a super stellar 4.0 student? That's something great that you want to highlight. Another important aspect of a lot of our employers is knowing that you're Calculus 1 ready. So you want to make sure that you list any sort of relevant courses, relevant math levels that you are taking, because again, this may not be applicable to maybe outside of school jobs, but specifically for our interns and internship opportunities, we want to make sure that you list your education at the top. So what you want to do is name your degree, the name of your institution, include city and state if it's not part of the title, and then list any degree in reverse chronological order. So meaning most recent degree, something that's in progress. It could be something that you've already earned. Maybe you already earned an AA or a certificate in like AutoCAD or something. Those are things you want to list. Also, in regards to date or expected date of graduation, ignore those numbers right there, but I would say this, if you are maybe a freshman and you're not going to transfer till maybe 3 years out, I would avoid putting expected date of graduation because that's farther than a year. If you are a year or less away from transferring, I would say go ahead and put when your date of transfer is. They don't need to know if it's going to take you longer than a year. Again, it's unless they do request it, some employers do. But again, I would say if you're maybe a year or less out before graduating, include that. If it's longer than that, don't include it. GPA, that one's something important to highlight too. You want to make sure to list your GPA if it's 3.0 or higher, or unless it's requested. If it's not, if it's below a 3.0, I would suggest leaving it off. Again, it might have been a rough semester, and that's okay. We all have those. But again, until you get to that 3.0 or above, that's when I would list it. And you want to round it to the nearest 10th. You don't need to add all the extra numbers, just 3.0, 3.3, 3.5. And then also make sure to note if you have any special awards or recognitions, like if you graduated or if you any of that, like summa cum laude, all that good stuff, you want to make sure you list that too. And then relevant coursework. I think this one is very important, especially for our STEM students, because again, it allows the employer to see what kind of subject matter you've been at least exposed to. So you want to list any relevant certificates, credentials, special licensing, or training as well. And an example of this is I have a lot of students sometimes who have taken an AutoCAD class or CATIA or SolidWorks or Java class. They may not have a certificate yet, and so they can't list that they have a certificate. But if you have already taken maybe Java 1, Java 2, or AutoCAD 1, AutoCAD 2, those are really important to list, right? Because that way the employer knows, okay, this student knows something of Java or something of AutoCAD. So again, it's a really great way to kind of help the employer to see your skills right off the bat. So this is Anita. Again, she has listed on here, she went to Santa Ana College, civil engineering major, 3.75 GPA. Her relevant coursework, she put introduction to engineering, AutoCAD 1, 2, general chem, physics, her math level. She also earned an engineering mechatronics certificate. And again, relevant coursework. Again, if I was an employer, a STEM employer, looking for interns, STEM interns, this would be great information for me to have, knowing even kind of them being able to picture where they can put you once once they join your team, knowing your background.
Myra, can I just say one thing on the previous slide?
Yeah.
We hear, or a common thing that we see from a lot of students is you all put, or very often students will put that they took engineering 212. We don't know what that means, right?
Yeah.
And I work with your campuses, and sometimes I have trouble even knowing what that is. So definitely an employer at Northrop is not going to understand like what that means. And the second thing I was going to point out is I know a lot of you might say like, oh, like I don't have very much information to put on my resume. I don't have any experience. That's specifically why you're in the STEM core program, is these classes are a big part of what you should be putting on your resumes. Also, a lot of you participated in Summer Bridge, for instance. So like thinking about those experiences, especially a lot of those experiences that are tailored into this program, and we're going to work with you to tailor that into your resume. So don't feel like I have nothing to put. That's why you're here.
Exactly. Thank you for mentioning that, Cheryl. And I'll dive into that in a couple slides. Yeah. You want to make sure, please don't put like engineering 103, 105, 110. That means nothing to anyone other than the people at your school, right? You want to make sure that you write out the full proper name: Introduction to Engineering, General Chemistry, AutoCAD 1, Engineering Graphics. Actually, when I do meet with students one-on-one, I like to request that you guys pull up on your end, like on your screen, your unofficial transcript, so that way you can look through it. And as I'm asking you, like, hey, what engineering classes or what STEM classes have you taken, you can look through and see, oh yeah, I took this class. Okay, what's the proper name of it? Because engineering 105 does not mean nothing, doesn't mean anything to me. So again, making sure to put proper titles to things. Okay, so skills. You want to make sure that you list any relevant skills that correlate to the career objective. What I always like to tell students, whether it's, working for interns or actually like looking for a job, applying for a job, I always like to pull up on Google. Google's my BFF. Pull up on Google the job description, whether it be for an internship or the actual job for the company that you're applying, or if you don't know the company, just a general job description for that position. I think that's a really great way to look at what kind of things employers are looking for. Again, it might not be the exact things that they are requiring from our student interns, but it's a good idea to have and to know what they're looking for. So you can either, if you don't have those skills, kind of make a mental note, okay, maybe I should take a class in this, or watch some YouTube videos on this, or, look and see if there's any like free, training or anything like that that I can get into. But knowing what kind of skills you need to brush up on is a really good idea. And also, if you have those skills, you want to make sure to note them if that's something that employers typically look for. So, some things that you want to make sure to list are, I can tell you right now, right off the bat, if you are not comfortable with like Microsoft Word or Excel, for all of our STEM majors, I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to start looking up. If you can't take a class because you don't have time in your schedule, then that's completely fine. But I mean, there's so many different YouTube videos you can look up, and start really learning how to work with Microsoft Word and Excel. Very different. It may be similar to Google Docs or not Google Docs, but Google Pages or whatever it's called, or Google Sheets and stuff. But honestly, most employers that we work with use the Microsoft Office. So you want to make sure you familiarize yourself, especially with Excel and Word. Just know that most employers that we talk to say that that's what they use in their work. And also you want to make sure that if you are in charge of something at the internship where you have to collect data or you have to create tables or whatever, you want to be able to have some sort of understanding. So again, make sure to brush up on that. But again, if you have those, you have a knowledge of them, list them. PowerPoint, Outlook. If you're a computer science major, making sure you put any sort of the computer program languages that and applications. So whether it be Java or C++, C#, HTML, all that good stuff. Or if you know any of machinery, right? So if you know how to use a 3D printer, laser cutter, CNC machine, lathe, anything like that, you want to make sure to list those skills. Those are all great skills that employers will definitely take a look at and note. Cheryl, anything you want to add on that one?
I was just going to say, even if you're not a computer science major and you have programming skills added in, a lot of our employers, like even if it's like not a specific internship that you are going to be coding or programming, they like to see it. And that's why for so many of you, your programs have built into your first year of STEM core that you're doing an intro to programming class. So that is perfect if you already have that going on. Whether you do or not, it's never a bad idea to like do like look it up on your own. Like there's just so many resources out there that even if you don't do a full class, you can still expose yourself to.
And one thing, after speaking to various like STEM employers, the one thing that they always come back to us with is, sometimes students tend to put blinders on in regards to their major, right? If you're an aerospace engineering major or computer science major, or, sometimes we can tend to just focus too much on just our specific major, and we don't take the students don't take the opportunity to explore other skill building opportunities. Remember, you want to make yourself marketable. You want to make yourself versatile. So make sure that you take these opportunities. Like on our campus, every semester they offer, a different like half unit course, right? Check on your campus to see if there's any opportunities. Maybe there's one on like mechatronics. Maybe there's one on programming. Maybe there's one on, AutoCAD or something. It doesn't even have to be, as Cheryl said, a full semester. If there's opportunities to take things in other programs or skill building that's related to STEM, that's a great idea, because again, it just opens up more doors for you. It doesn't, you may have been an aerospace engineering major, right? You, in focusing specifically just on aerospace skills, of course it'll open doors, but if you add more tools to your toolbox, like I like to say, you're just gonna open so many more doors for yourself.
And also keeping in mind that like that first internship might not be directly related. It
Mhm.
may not. And you have to be aware of that, but also realize that that could lead to the second or the third placement and meeting the right people. So just, I think the overarching theme is just try to be as open-minded as possible to different experiences. Go to different guest speakers, like even like for our employer speaker series that we have coming up. If you're like, I only want to work at Cisco, guess what? You might not get that Cisco internship, right? So you need to hear from other people as well and be open-minded to it. So just things to consider.
Exactly. Another thing to note too is language. If you're bilingual, make sure to list in any sort of, and the extent of your language skills too. So for example, you may be able, for me, right, I can speak Spanish. I'm a native Spanish speaker. So, and native is different than having learned it in high school, right? Native means I have basically grown up with it. I understand maybe like even cultural connotations of words and whatnot. So it's a little different, right? But I can read, speak, write, and translate it. So that's something you would want to put on there. If you feel comfortable with only speaking a language, then put that down. And I would, like I said, and on the one-on-one meetings with students, I make sure to note that, because you never know. A lot of these companies nowadays are seeking specific people with specific languages. I know a lot of times it can depend by region that we're in, but at least over here, like in Southern California, like Farsi, Spanish, Vietnamese, those are all great languages to know. So if you do, always add that on your resume. But yeah, that's always a nice plus. So here's an example of Anita, her skill set. So she has Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. She's advanced in this. AutoCAD, she's intermediate, which is good to know too. Arduino, SolidWorks, beginner, and then she's a bilingual native Spanish speaker. She can read, speak, and write. So again, just quick little ways to show employers what your skill set and level of comfort is with them. Also, by the way, I did not mention this at the start of the presentation, but if you have questions and I see a couple trickling in, feel free to jot them down in the chat. I'll address them at the end, because I have a tendency to go on a tangent when I answer questions during the presentation. So if anything pops up, put it in the box and then we'll answer it at the end. Okie dokie. So thank you for already doing so. Okay, so experience. Use the term experience. Okay, you want to, in the experience section of your resume, which I would say, you could do work experience, or if you have no work experience, you can also do relevant academic experience, and I'll kind of break that down. But experience in this sense, and for your resume, I would say consider experience as full or any sort of like full part-time jobs, self-employment, any volunteer work, any sort of practicum, field, and or cooperative education. So again, that is what I would consider experience for your resume. You want to make sure that we emphasize relevant experience and minimize irrelevant experience. I would say for the most of you, a one-page resume is awesome. The danger, obviously, as you guys go on in your careers, you get that first degree, you want to move on to the second one, you've already piled up a couple relevant jobs. Of course, your resume is going to go on to probably a 2-pager, maybe even 3-pagers, right? But for where I think most of our students are at this point, and then relevancy of your even, jobs that you've had, you want to keep it to 1 page. And the reason being, especially if it's a very competitive employer that we're working with, a lot of times because of the volume of applications or resumes that they get, and this is also just for generally speaking, employers usually take, I forgot what the exact number of seconds is, but I know it's less than a minute that they take usually to look at resumes, especially if they receive them in high volumes. So you want to make sure that the most relevant and important information that you want that employer to see is on that first page. Okay, so that's why I emphasize only put relevant experience and minimize any irrelevant experience. Okay. Obviously information to include for like the different employers or experience that you've had: company name, your job title, dates of employment, and then, city, state, and your duties. Normally I like to bold the title of the job, just because that's usually what employers like to look at, like, okay, what have you been doing at these jobs? But again, it kind of just depends on what you've had under your belt, but we can always go over that in the one-on-ones. With experience, you also always want to make sure you emphasize your accomplishments. And what do I mean by that? Quantify your actions whenever possible. If you worked, let's say, I don't know, at Target, right? And you were a supervisor. How many people did you supervise? Did you supervise a group of 10 people, of 20 people, of 5 people? If you volunteered, how many hours did you volunteer? I think it always just makes a huge impact on people when they're reading it in numbers, as opposed to saying, oh, I supervised people, or I supervised new hires as they came in, as opposed to I supervised groups of 10, new hires for every cycle or whatever it may be. Again, putting numbers to things usually helps people visualize things. So again, that's a great way to just quantify your actions. Okay, so Anita actually has not actually had a typical, what you would say like a typical job, right? But she has had relevant academic experience. So for Anita's resume, she listed relevant academic experience and leadership activities. So for those students who maybe it's their first year and you are in STEM core, this is a great opportunity to put this, right? So you could put STEM core program, and then she participated in the robotics workshop. I would actually probably split this up and explain that you are in the STEM core program, and then underneath that put robotics workshop. But she put right here, participated in introduction workshop to the Arduino microcontroller, learning about the basics of C++ programming, including variables, input, output, learned how to code, compile, and debug in C++, programmed several Arduino projects. This is great. And again, these are things that you guys will probably be doing or something similar to on your own campuses when you're taking maybe an engineering class or these special kind of workshops that we do or your campuses offer. So take note of that, and make sure to bring it up when you're writing your, when you're putting together your resume, because you may not have had work experience, but you've had relevant academic experience. So definitely make sure to list that. If you're in any sort of also like, I know a lot of students who are in like clubs and all that good stuff, or in competitions, you can also list that too. If you were in charge of a project, that's relevant academic experience. So you want to make sure to list those things. Honors and awards. Again, you want to keep it relevant. If it's not really relevant to STEM and you're already hitting like the end of the page, you may or may not want to put it, just depending on your spacing. But in regards to honors and awards, put it by the order of dates, so reverse chronological. You want to rank it by importance to your career objective, and you want to make sure to include the award name and from whom it's from. If you're in any sort of like professional affiliations or organizations, you want to make sure to list those. So for example, like if you're in SWE, right, Society of Women Engineers, or if you're in ASME, the American Society of Mechanical Engineering, because you're a student member, you want to list those things. That's always awesome to list. Put it by the order that you joined. Rank it in order by importance to your career objective. If you have any sort of leadership roles, so I know sometimes students are like in ASG, or ASG, ASB, however it's called at your campus, like the Associated Student Government. That's something great to list too, a leadership thing, right? You want to make sure to spell out the organization's name. Don't use abbreviations, okay? Not everyone's going to know what ASG is. Not everyone's going to know what SWE is. You want to make sure to write out those proper names. Actually, Cheryl, did you want to include anything else? Sorry, I haven't checked in with you.
No, you're good. I know we're short on time, so I will interject when I need to.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. I told you all I like to talk a lot, so okay, a couple resume do's. Another thing that's super important too, is when you send us well, not us, because we technically work with our students one-on-one to make sure everything's good to go. But for future reference, when you're applying to something and you have to submit your resume straight to an employer, make sure you send it in a PDF version. Why? This locks in your format, because if they open it in a Word doc version on their end, things might be moved around. Things can be easily manipulated. So send it as a PDF version, so that way everything is locked into place. You want to make sure to use action verbs. Vary your choice of verbs, change it up a bit. And I'll have some resources for you at the end that I'll talk about, that you can use as a guide. Tailor your skills and experience to the job for which you're applying for. As I mentioned, Google's your best friend. Look up those job descriptions and see what these employers are looking for, and see if you have any skills that match that, and make sure to list that on your resume. Spell check and proofread. Again, sometimes it's the smallest details that employers, and it's not even sometimes, all the time, employers pay attention to these things. So make sure you get a second or third pair of eyes to look through your resume. There's nothing worse than having, misspellings and just different, it just does not look pretty, Be concise while providing enough detail. Again, keep your resume to 1 page in length. Make sure that email address is appropriate, and then keep your resume header the same as your cover letter. But again, for at least us in our application process, you won't need to worry about a cover letter. Resume don'ts. You do not need to put I, me, my. We know this resume is about you. Don't use contractions. Spell out the whole word. You want to make it look professional. I get this a lot. Don't include references. Remember that first page, your resume in general is think of it as prime real estate. What do I mean by that? It's precious space. You don't need to waste space on your resume on references. If an employer requests references, great, provide it on a separate sheet of paper, but don't include it on your resume sheet, because again, that is prime space and it's just supposed to be about you. Do not clutter your resume with non-essential information. Don't use flowery information or generalized statements. Don't make any misrepresentations. This is a big one. What do I mean by that? Don't lie. Don't say you have a skill if you really don't. That's why I'm all about listing your level of comfort with skill, because you might know, for example, AutoCAD, but are you a beginner or are you advanced, right? Be honest, because it has happened to me, probably shouldn't have listed Excel, and that I was like, good with it, because I am not. And when it came down to an interview and I was asked, how do you add this column? Like, what code do you put? I did not know how to answer, and it was very embarrassing. So don't put yourself in that situation. Be honest. Make sure that that you are comfortable if you are ever tested on the spot, with your level of knowledge of whatever it is, skill set that you know that you did. Do not use abbreviations or acronyms, and don't include personal information. So, such as social security, age, sex, height, marital status. They don't need to know that. Again, it'll probably be things that you fill out on an application anyway, so that doesn't need to go on your resume, okay? And last couple things, some tips and tricks. Keep your resume format simple. I highly suggest you avoid using templates. It's a great way, like it makes the resumes look fancy schmancy, but honestly, after speaking to the employers that we have, they tend to prefer simple, straightforward, and nicely organized. You don't need to do all these fancy schmancy things, especially for technical STEM majors. Honestly, without a template, you will be fine. And again, if you need help, you can schedule a one-on-one with me, but just don't use templates. It makes your life, I think, a lot harder when you're trying to go back and adding in things or trying to fix spacing. It's not fun. So I would avoid those. Again, proofread. Also, you want to make sure you use a uniform font type, size, and margin setting. Again, these are things that employers pay attention to. There are people who are paid to research these things, like things such as, what font's acceptable for what kind of major and all that stuff. There really is such a thing. For technical and or STEM majors, kind of the suggested fonts are Calibri, Arial, and Garamond. I would stick to one of those three. And then in regards to sizing of your font, you don't want to go smaller than a font size 10 and no bigger than a size 12. Okay. Suggested margin sizing is 1 inch all around, but if you find that you're going over that page and it's just by a little, then it's okay to go to 0.5 around the margin. Also, you want to make sure to use your bold, italics, and underlining sparingly. Only use it to really highlight the most important things, because if it's bold and italics overload, 1, it makes it hard to read, and 2, it just makes it too busy. So you want to avoid that. Now, after all my talking, I think you are ready to get started. So I'm going to share with you, I created some worksheets to help guide you guys as you are creating your resumes. Again, don't overthink this. It's a lot easier than you think. Remember, resumes are constantly updating. As students, I highly, highly, highly encourage you and suggest that at the end of every semester, update your resume. Add those relevant courses that you've taken in STEM. Update those relevant skills that you just gained after the semester, because if you wait to update it every year, trust me, I mean, I have the memory of Dory from Finding Nemo. My memory is really bad. So I know that I need to make a time to update my resume so I don't forget awesome skills that I have picked up every semester. And then what I'm going to do is in the chat, I'm going to share a scheduling link. If you would like to schedule a virtual one-on-one appointment with me, I'm more than happy to do so. I have several times starting on Monday. If you would like to set up the meeting. What it is I am going to have you already come to the meeting with at least the bones of your resume ready to roll. So that's just giving me the general information. These one-on-one sessions do take about half an hour to an hour, depending how much work we need to do. And again, it's just a great way to, if you're stuck on something, if you want some guidance, I'm more than happy to help you. And I also, again, I'm going to also share a link to our Google Drive that we created for you, where I have all these documents that I made that can guide you on your resume creation. Okay. I believe that is my last slide. Woohoo! So you got this. So let me stop the share here. Cheryl, if you want to pop in while I get the links.
So guys, I realized that was a lot of information that we just threw at you. So I think the key to this is really, I think we sit down with a lot of students who feel like they don't have anything to put on their resumes, but I think in this presentation, Myra does a really good job of taking experiences that you have had and or are about to have, and how you can articulate that onto your resume. So I think that the goal is that you really need to start thinking about the experiences that you are having and what you're doing. Are you in a club? Is there a project that you're working on? And things that you can make tangible to put on your STEM resumes. Yeah, I think that's going to be the big difference. But then also realizing that you're not doing this by yourself. There are several lines of assistance that we'll have for you, starting with your campus student support specialist is a great resource. Being able to meet with our growth sector team for one-on-one sessions, and even like utilizing, like, it never hurts for multiple people to see the same resume, because you'll be surprised by how many times you tweak, and even though you think it's perfect, you change it a little bit. So just knowing that it's sort of like a living and working document, and you all are really ahead of the curve because you're already thinking about all of this for submission later on in the semester. So realizing that you're already doing a great job, you're here, and now we'll start the process.
Now the work starts. So I see some of the questions. I know we only have like 2 minutes left. But I see some of the questions. We will be sending this recording after this. It takes Zoom like a minute to kind of get everything together. Once that link is created for the recording, we will send it out to, I believe, the support specialist, right, Cheryl?
Well, that, and then we also have the list of attendees. So I think if you're in this session, then we can email it to you directly.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll email you directly with not only the link for the recording, but also the link for the Google Drive with the materials that I made for you, and also the link with the one-on-one sessions that you can register for. Again, we can get more into like the nitty-gritty of the details for your resumes on a one-on-one. But again, I think with kind of the examples provided in the presentation, again, I know it was a lot of information, so my apologies, but hopefully that provides a good guide to get you started. And also don't worry too much about, I haven't had a job. Like Cheryl said, I'm brand new. Start thinking about the courses that you are, or opportunities that you're participating through this program, because that can make a world of difference. So let me see. Should I stop the recording at this point? Yeah.
Sure. In case any other questions, feel free to unmute yourself if you have like a burning question before we sign off, if you want to ask.